1962, somewhere on Route 6 outside Hartford, Connecticut. 4 in the afternoon, a station wagon pulled off the road and rolled into a parking lot. A father in shirt sleeves, a mother in a cotton dress with a small white belt, 2 children in the back seat, sticky from a morning in the car. The driver's door opened. The smell of warm asphalt rose off the lot, and then, lifting above everything else, the smell of fried clams and vanilla. The building was orange and white. The roof was the color of a peach in late August, porcelain-bonded steel, baked at 1,500 degrees, visible from a quarter-mile away. The cupola on top was sky blue, almost cobalt. On top of the cupola, a brass weather vane turned slowly in the late summer wind. A stout man chasing a little boy with a pie. Simple Simon and the Pieman. A wrought iron lantern on either side of the front door. A neon sign that read Howard Johnson's in a clean serif font. Inside, a counter ran the length of the room. 28 glass tubs of ice cream behind a curved glass case. Banana, peach, pistachio, frozen pudding, fruit salad, peppermint stick, maple walnut, burgundy cherry, butter pecan. A waitress in an orange and white uniform with a small paper hat. A folded paper menu with a cardboard insert. A coloring book for the children with a real lollipop stapled to the front. A glass of water with 3 cubes of ice, set down before anyone asked for it. A jukebox in the corner playing soft. Outside, the cars came and went. The orange roof was a promise. The host of the highways, America's restaurant. These are 12 forgotten things about Howard Johnson's, the restaurant that once was the American highway and which has been quietly erased from every road in this country. By the year 2024, of the 1,000 restaurants that once lined our interstates, exactly 0 remained. Every single one has vanished. The corporations that replaced them would prefer you never knew what they took with them when they came. Now, before we dive in, tap that subscribe button. You will not want to miss what is coming next. Number 12. A drugstore in Wollaston, Massachusetts. In 1925, a man named Howard Deering Johnson bought a failing corner drugstore on Beale Street in Wollaston, a working-class neighborhood of Quincy, 15 minutes south of Boston. He was 28 years old. He had no money. He had no business education. He borrowed $2,000 from a local butcher and a few friends and signed the papers on a small storefront that smelled of cough syrup and dust. The previous owner had let the soda fountain go cold. Howard Johnson started there. He bought a hand-crank ice cream churn from a Sears Roebuck catalog. He fired the supplier of cheap commercial mix. He bought butter, sugar, fresh cream from a farm in Norwell, and natural fruit instead of syrup. He doubled the butterfat content of the ice cream from the legal minimum of 10% to nearly 20%. The first batch was vanilla, the second was strawberry, made with crushed berries from a field outside Brockton. He sold a small dish for 5 cents and a triple cone for a dime. By the summer of 1925, lines formed on Beale Street for the ice cream. He could not keep enough vanilla in the case. Howard Johnson himself said in an interview years later that he sold $60,000 of ice cream out of the front of that drugstore in the first summer alone, from a hand-crank churn behind a soda fountain in a small commercial block in Massachusetts. The drugstore is gone now. The building stands, but the soda counter was ripped out in the 1970s. There is no marker. There is no plaque. The man who would become the host of the highways began with a borrowed $2,000 and a churn that turned by hand. Number 11. The 28 flavors. By 1929, Howard Johnson's ice cream had become its own institution. He had moved from a hand-crank churn to a small factory floor behind the drugstore. He had added flavors slowly: vanilla, strawberry, chocolate, peach, then maple walnut, then coffee, then frozen pudding, a flavor of his own invention with rum-soaked raisins and candied fruit sold only in cold weather. Then burgundy cherry, a deep wine-red ice cream with whole Bing cherries from Oregon. Then peppermint stick with crushed candy from a confectioner in Cambridge. Then butter pecan, then fruit salad, then pistachio with imported nuts from California dyed pale green with a food coloring no laboratory had yet been asked to question. 28 flavors by 1929. There would be no 29th for 40 years. The number became a brand. Howard Johnson's 28 flavors of premium ice cream. The slogan ran in the Saturday Evening Post, in Good Housekeeping, in McCall's, painted on the side of trucks. Each tub held 5 gallons. Each tub was kept at exactly 26 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 degrees colder than competitors, so the scoop came out denser. A double dip in 1934 cost 5 cents. A sundae with hot fudge cost 12. What today's industry calls premium ice cream is a marketing word. Howard Johnson's ice cream was 20% butterfat by federal weight. Today's leading so-called premium brand contains 12. The legal minimum overrun, the air whipped into a frozen dessert to inflate its volume, is 100%. Howard Johnson's ice cream contained 9%. You could feel the difference in your spoon. You could feel the cold weight of it on your tongue. Number 10. The Orange Roof. In 1935, Howard Johnson realized something the rest of the restaurant industry would not understand for another generation. He understood that the American highway was about to swallow the country. The Federal Aid Highway Act was 3 years old. The Pennsylvania Turnpike was being surveyed. The cars were getting faster, the drivers were going further. And every one of them, sooner or later, was going to need to stop. He wanted his restaurant to be visible at 50 miles an hour from half a mile away. He hired an architect from Boston, a man named Joseph Morgan, and they tested 7 roof colors against a Massachusetts sky. Red disappeared at dusk. Yellow disappeared in fog. White disappeared against winter. Blue disappeared against summer. Orange, a specific baked porcelain orange, the color of a ripe Florida fruit, appeared in every weather, against every backdrop, at every hour of the day. The roof tiles were custom porcelain bonded steel, fired in a kiln in Ohio at 1,500 degrees. Each tile cost roughly 9 times the price of a standard asphalt shingle. Each restaurant required between 400 and 800 tiles, depending on the building's size. The first orange roof went up in Quincy, Massachusetts in 1936. The last one that still showed orange to a passing driver was painted over in beige in the year 2017. The driver did not need to read the sign. The driver did not need to remember the name. The driver only needed to see the roof. And every American who lived between 1936 and 1985 knew what the orange roof meant. It meant a clean restroom. It meant a hot meal. It meant a tank of gasoline next door. It meant the family could eat in 20 minutes and be back on the road. It meant the building was answering to a standard set in Wollaston, Massachusetts. There is no equivalent in modern American highway culture. There is no roof color anywhere on Interstate 95 today that means anything at all. Number 9. The weather vane and the blue cupola. Above the orange roof on every Howard Johnson's restaurant built after 1936 sat a sky blue cupola, an octagonal lantern of painted wood and slate, roughly the size of a small garden shed, perched at the peak of the building like the steeple of a Methodist church. The cupola had no purpose. It vented no air. It held no light. It was decoration, pure and confident, a flag of identity nailed to the highest point of every building. On top of every cupola was a copper weather vane. The weather vane was always the same, a stout, jolly man in a tricorn hat chasing a small boy with a pie raised over his head. Simple Simon and the Pieman from the English nursery rhyme. The weather vane was cast in a foundry in Vermont. Each cost $74 in 1940, roughly $1,500 today, and each one weighed 11 pounds. Wind turned them slowly, a small mark of motion at the top of every building. There was a reason for the choice. Howard Johnson believed and stated in a Business Week interview in 1958 that American children had to see a Howard Johnson's before they were old enough to read its sign. The orange roof did that, the blue cupola did that, the weather vane did that. By the time a child was 4 years old, a Howard Johnson's had become a shape in his head, a landmark you knew before you knew the alphabet. That child became a customer for life. That customer drove his own children there. That child became the parent who would say to the back seat, "Look, an orange roof, 20 minutes, we'll stop." The weather vanes were sold off in batches at auction between 1985 and 2005. They turn up now on eBay for between $300 and $1,200. None of them are on a cupola anywhere. The cupolas were ripped down with the buildings. There are 16 still standing in New England, all on private homes, all repainted, all anonymous. Number 8. The first franchise. In 1935, 10 years after the drugstore, 23 years before the first McDonald's hamburger stand in Des Plaines, Illinois, Howard Johnson did something no American restaurant operator had ever done. He sold his name. A man named Reginald Sprague had a small restaurant on Cape Cod in the town of Orleans. The location was good. The food was unremarkable. Sprague wanted to put a Howard Johnson sign on his building. He came to Wollaston. He sat in Howard Johnson's office. He made a proposal. He would pay an annual fee and a royalty on sales. He would buy his food from Howard Johnson's commissary in Quincy. He would follow Howard Johnson's recipes exactly. He would paint his roof orange. He would put up the cupola and the weather vane. In exchange, he would call his restaurant Howard Johnson's, and he would draw the customers who already knew that name. They shook hands. The Cape Cod restaurant opened in the summer of 1935 with an orange roof and a copper weather vane. By Labor Day, Sprague had earned more money than he had earned in the previous 3 summers combined. Howard Johnson had just invented the modern American restaurant franchise. This is worth saying carefully. The model that built McDonald's, that built Burger King, that built every chain restaurant on every highway exit in this country. That model was invented by a man from Quincy, Massachusetts in 1935, 20 years before Ray Kroc walked into a hamburger stand in California. The first franchise contract in American restaurant history was for Howard Johnson's. The standardization of recipes, the commissary supply, the per-store royalty, the brand policing of every element. He did it first. He did it 23 years before McDonald's. By 1940, Howard Johnson's had 107 franchised restaurants. By 1954, 400. Number 7. The fried clam strip. In 1929, in the small town of Ipswich on the north shore of Massachusetts, a clam digger named Thomas Soffren was looking at a problem. He owned a small clam company, Soffren Brothers Clam Company, and he could not sell the bellies of the soft-shell clam. The clam belly was the dark, fat, briny middle of the clam, and the customers in the Boston restaurants did not want to eat it. They wanted the foot, the firm white muscle the clam used to dig. Soffren started cutting the foot off the clam and selling only the strip. He sold them battered and deep-fried. They were lighter, crisper, easier to eat with a fork. He took the new product to Howard Johnson, who was running a beach restaurant in Wollaston Beach in addition to the drugstore. Howard Johnson tasted them. He bought the exclusive rights for 5 years for a flat fee that Thomas Soffren later said was $3,000 to serve fried clam strips in any restaurant under the Howard Johnson's name. The tender sweet fried clam strip became the most ordered item on the Howard Johnson's menu from 1934 until roughly 1972. They were served in a small paper-lined basket with a wedge of lemon and a small white paper cup of tartar sauce. The price in 1940 was 35 cents. The price in 1965 was $1.25. The clams came from Ipswich, frozen in 5-pound boxes, the same Soffren Brothers operation that had started the practice. Soffren Brothers still exists. They still ship fried clam strips. They ship to no Howard Johnson's restaurant anywhere in the United States anymore because none exists. What today's chain restaurants sell as a clam strip is a product extruded from minced clam meat and fish paste, breaded, frozen, and shipped from a factory in Vietnam. Thomas Soffren would not have recognized it as a clam. Now consider what was happening in the years between the Orange Roof and the World's Fair. A man in Quincy, Massachusetts, who had borrowed $2,000 from a butcher, was building a system, not a restaurant, A system. A system in which a child in Indiana and a child in Maine could sit down to lunch at the same table, different states, different highways, different cities, and order the same chicken pot pie, the same fried clam strips, the same frozen pudding ice cream, and trust that they would taste the same. The recipes were typed on cards in Wollaston. The recipes were locked in steel safes in the commissary. The cooks were trained for 2 weeks at Howard Johnson's training kitchen in Quincy before they were allowed to put a uniform on. The waitresses memorized a script. Notice what they share, these things. Not one of them required deception. Not one of them required a corporation behind it. The recipes were real recipes. The ice cream was real cream. The clams were real clams. The orange roof was real porcelain. The cupola was real wood. The weather vane was real copper. And the man whose name was on every door was a man named Howard, who lived in a house in Quincy, who took the train into the office every morning, and whose 2 sons worked in the family business under his eye. What replaced it was something else. What replaced it was the corporation that owns a brand without ever having touched a clam. What replaced it was the licensing agreement that puts a logo on a building and a frozen patty in a fryer. What replaced it was the highway exit where every restaurant is identical and every restaurant is a stranger. By 1965, Howard Johnson's had reached a peak. No chain has matched proportionally since. Then, very quickly, it began to fall. Number 6. The Pennsylvania Turnpike Contract. In October 1940, the Pennsylvania Turnpike opened its first 160-mile stretch, the first long-distance, high-speed, divided, limited-access highway in the United States. It was the prototype for the entire interstate system that would not be authorized until 1956. The Turnpike Commission needed restaurants for the drivers. They wanted one operator. They invited proposals. Howard Johnson outbid every other restaurant chain in America. He paid the Turnpike Commission a substantial concession fee. Historians have placed it at around $200,000 in 1940 money, roughly $4.5 million today, for the exclusive right to operate every restaurant on the Pennsylvania Turnpike for 10 years. 7 Howard Johnson's restaurants opened along the new road in 1941, the Allegheny, the Sidling Hill, the South Midway, the North Midway, the Blue Mountain, the Hempfield, the Bowmansville. Each one was identical. Same orange roof, same fried clams, same 28 flavors, same waitress in an orange uniform, same chicken pot pie. The driver did not need to think. He pulled off the road. He ate. He pulled back on the road. The Turnpike Commission renewed the exclusive contract 3 times. This was the template for the entire American highway food experience as it would unfold over the next 50 years. The state would build the road. A single corporation would supply the food. The driver would not need to make a decision. He would not need to read a sign. He would not need to know where he was. The orange roof on the Pennsylvania Turnpike in 1944 was the same orange roof on the New Jersey Turnpike in 1953 and the same orange roof on Interstate 95 in 1968. A New York family driving to Florida ate at 12 Howard Johnson's between Yonkers and Jacksonville, and the menu was the same in every one. Today, the rest stops on the Pennsylvania Turnpike serve Sparrow and Burger King. The Howard Johnson's restaurants were demolished between 1985 and 1992. Number 5. The Motor Lodge. In 1954, Howard Johnson's opened its first motor lodge in Savannah, Georgia, on U.S. Route 17. It was a low, single-story structure with 48 rooms, an orange roof, a small swimming pool surrounded by a chain-link fence, and a Howard Johnson's restaurant attached. The room rate was $8 a night. The pool was free. Children stayed free in the parents' room. A complimentary copy of the Saturday Evening Post sat on every nightstand. The Motor Lodge was a deliberate response to a problem the American highway had not yet solved. The motels of the 1940s and early 50s were unregulated, often dirty, sometimes unsafe, and almost always independent. A family stopping for the night had to choose between an unfamiliar mom-and-pop motel and a downtown hotel. Howard Johnson's offered a third option, the same standard the orange roof represented for food, the motor lodge represented for lodging. A clean room, a working television, a made bed, a working air conditioner, a restaurant attached, and the same orange roof from one end of the country to the other. By 1961, there were 100 Howard Johnson's motor lodges. By 1968, 320. By 1975, the peak, more than 500 motor lodges from coast to coast. They were the standard against which Holiday Inn and Quality Inn measured themselves. When the American family of 1965 imagined a road trip, they imagined a motor lodge. The room key was a brass tag with an orange enamel inset shaped like the roof. The motor lodges still exist, after a fashion. A company called Wyndham Hotels owns the name now and operates roughly 200 Howard Johnson by Wyndham Motels, most of them franchised, almost none of them with an orange roof. The brand survived. The standard did not. Number 4. The Peak. In the spring of 1965, Howard Johnson's was the largest restaurant company in the United States, larger than McDonald's, larger than Burger King, larger than every other chain combined. 770 restaurants, 500 motor lodges, 15,000 employees, a commissary system that produced food for every one of those restaurants and shipped it on refrigerated trucks. An annual revenue of more than $390 million in 1965 money, roughly $3.5 billion today. Time magazine put Howard Deering Johnson on the cover in 1959. The headline read, "The Howard Who Feeds America." Inside the magazine, photographs of the orange roof from Maine to Florida. A pie chart of the 28 flavors. An accountant's portrait of a privately held family company that had managed to feed a country without ever losing its hand. Howard Deering Johnson had 2 sons. His son, Howard Brennan Johnson, who went by Howard Jr., was being prepared to take over the company. His son, Roger Johnson, ran the commissary. There was no public stock, there were no investors, there was no board of corporate raiders. Then, in 1959, Howard Deering Johnson decided to take the company public. Shares of Howard Johnson Company traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The family retained controlling interest, but for the first time in 34 years, a Howard Johnson decision could be questioned by an outside shareholder. The family did not yet know what that would mean. Howard Sr. died in 1972 of a heart attack in Boston at the age of 75, with his son already in the chairman's seat. Howard Jr. had been running the company for 5 years. The shareholders had begun to ask harder questions. The peak was 1965. From 1965 onward, the decline was constant, year after year, slow at first, accelerating, until in the early 1980s, the family stopped trying to hold the wheel. Number 3. The Imperial Sale. In September 1979, the Howard Johnson Company was sold to the Imperial Group of London, a British tobacco and food conglomerate that owned Player's Cigarettes, John Player Special, Golden Wonder Snacks, and Ross Frozen Foods. The price was $630 million. The Johnson family walked away. Howard Brennan Johnson signed the papers, took the check, and retired. He was 66 years old. He would die in 2007. He would never own a piece of the company his father had built again. Imperial knew tobacco. Imperial knew frozen foods. Imperial did not know American restaurants. The first thing Imperial did was cut costs. The commissary system, the very heart of the chain, the reason the chicken pot pie tasted the same in Tennessee and Maine, was downgraded. Local suppliers were brought in. The recipes were modified to use cheaper ingredients. The butterfat content of the ice cream was quietly reduced from 20% to 14% and then to 12%. The fried clam strips began to be sourced from a frozen supplier that was not Safran Brothers. The waitresses were told to stop offering the free coloring book. The lollipops disappeared. The orange paint on the roofs began to fade and was not replaced. Customers noticed. The food was different. The service was different. The orange roof was not as bright. The pool at the motor lodge was no longer cleaned every morning. The competition, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, the rapidly expanding fast food sector, was hammering on the same highway exits with a cheaper, faster, more aggressive product. Howard Johnson's had been built for the family road trip of 1962. By 1981, the family road trip was gone. The interstate was full of single drivers in a hurry. The booth and the waitress had stopped making sense. Imperial lost money on the chain every year from 1979 to 1985. Then they sold it. Number 2, the Marriott split. In 1985, the Marriott Corporation bought the entire Howard Johnson Company from Imperial for $300 million, less than half what Imperial had paid for it 6 years earlier. Marriott was a hotel company. Marriott wanted the motor lodges. Marriott did not want the restaurants. The deal closed in September 1985. Within 6 months, Marriott had sold the Howard Johnson's restaurant business to a small Boston firm called Prime Motor Inns, which had no restaurant experience and very little capital. The motor lodges were rebranded. Marriott kept some under the Howard Johnson by Marriott name and converted others to Marriott's own brands. The restaurants were left to fend for themselves. The commissary was dismantled. The training kitchen in Quincy was closed, and the building sold for office space. The waitresses' uniforms were not replaced. The pension fund for longtime employees was disputed in court for the next decade. This was the moment the brand died, even though the building stayed open for another 40 years. A restaurant chain without a commissary, without a training kitchen, without an executive office in Quincy, without a Johnson family member anywhere in the business. That chain was a logo on a building. The logo was orange. The roof was orange. But the system that the orange roof had once represented, the standard, the recipe card, the trained cook, the trained waitress, the same chicken pot pie in California and Maine, that system was gone in the fall of 1985, and it never came back. From a peak of 770 restaurants in 1965, Howard Johnson's was down to 130 by 1990. By 2000, 16. By 2005, 8. By 2015, 3. By 2022, 1 in Bangor, Maine, and 1 in Lake George, New York. The buildings still stood. The orange roofs were faded. The cupolas were intact. The weather vanes were gone, stolen, or sold. The Pie Man was no longer chasing Simple Simon on the top of any orange roof in America. Number 1, Lake George, New York, March 28, 2022. The last full-service Howard Johnson's restaurant in the United States closed in Lake George, New York on a Monday afternoon in March of 2022. It had been owned by a local restaurateur named John LaRock, who had bought the building in 1979 and never let it die. He had kept the orange roof painted bright. He had kept the cupola repaired. He had kept the weather vane in place, a working brass pieman chasing a working brass Simple Simon, the last one on a Howard Johnson's roof in the United States of America. He had kept the menu, the fried clams, the chicken pot pie, the Frankfurts in their split New England buns, the 28 flavors. He had kept the booth seating. He had kept the soda fountain. He had kept the lollipops at the cash register. He was 81 years old when he closed it. He had told the local newspaper that he was tired. The kitchen equipment was failing. The freezer needed replacing. The boilers were past their service life. He could not justify the investment. He locked the doors at the end of dinner service on that Monday in March. The orange roof tiles stayed on the building. The weather vane stayed on the cupola. The neon sign stayed in the window. The building has not been demolished. It still stands. It is empty. A second restaurant, a small franchise in Lake Placid, New York, that had been operating under license, limped on for 2 more years on a reduced menu. It was a Howard Johnson's in name only. The ice cream was no longer made in-house. The fried clams came from a national broadline distributor. The orange paint on its roof had been redone in a cheaper enamel. It closed in the spring of 2024. There is no Howard Johnson's restaurant operating anywhere in the United States today. None remain. The Bangor main restaurant, which had been the second to last to close in 2017, was demolished in 2019 for a parking lot. The Pennsylvania Turnpike restaurants are gone. The New Jersey Turnpike restaurants are gone. The roadside restaurants in New England, in the Midwest, in Florida, in California, in Texas, every single one is gone. The orange roofs that defined the American highway between 1936 and 1985, every single one is repainted, demolished, or sitting empty. Walter Cronkite once said on the CBS Evening News in 1968 that you could measure American post-war prosperity by counting the orange roofs from any car window between Boston and Miami. The roofs were still there then. You could count them. Today, you can drive that same route, Interstate 95, the entire eastern seaboard, every cloverleaf and exit and rest area, and you will not see one. "12 things about Howard Johnson's. Not one of them needed a corporation. Not one of them needed a venture capital firm. Not one of them needed a Wi-Fi password or a loyalty app or a digital signage screen on the highway shoulder. They needed butter, cream, fresh clams from the North Shore of Massachusetts, a small printing press in Quincy for the menu cards, and the belief that an American family stopping for an hour on a long drive deserved to be fed something that someone had cared about. What changed was not what the American highway needed. What changed was who got paid. The chains that replaced Howard Johnson's are owned by holding companies that are owned by private equity firms that are owned by pension funds and sovereign wealth funds in countries that have never seen an orange roof. The clams in their baskets are not clams. The ice cream in their cups is air and milk solids and a stabilizer agent listed on the side of the cup in a font so small you cannot read it without your reading glasses. The chicken pot pie costs $12, and it is made in a factory in Ohio and shipped frozen to every chain restaurant between here and Texas. The waitress who serves it does not work for the chain. She works for a staffing agency in Tennessee. That is not progress. That is a transaction, and the American family on the highway is not the customer. The American family on the highway is the product. 12 forgotten things. 12. The drugstore in Wollaston, the 28 flavors, the orange roof, the weather vane, the first franchise, the fried clam strip, the Pennsylvania Turnpike contract, the Motor Lodge, the Peak, the Imperial Sale, the Marriott Split. And one empty building in Lake George, New York, with the orange paint still on the roof and the lights turned off behind the windows. And somewhere right now, in a town in upstate New York, in a kitchen in suburban Massachusetts, in a basement freezer in Connecticut, an old man is opening a small foam container of vanilla ice cream he bought at a roadside Howard Johnson's in 1973 and has kept, half-jokingly, in the back of his freezer ever since. The lid comes off, the smell of real vanilla, real cream, and 50 years of cold air rises into the room. A granddaughter is standing in the doorway, watching, and without a word, he hands her a spoon, and the lesson begins again.